Everybody, it's right at 10 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning to everyone, and thanks for joining us for the latest edition of Long's Coffee Break. Today, I am joined by Mark Duggan. He is our regional sales manager for Raypak Ream Commercial Water, and he will be presenting on one of their boilers, the XVers KOR, and dynamic protection, with dynamic protection, and going over a couple other technologies that they offer. Mark, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thanks, Gary. So like Gary said, my name is Mark Duggan. I am the regional sales manager for Raypak here in the Mountain West region. Today we're going to be talking about our XVers with KOR, which is our condensing fire tube boiler, 1 million to 4 million BTUs. We're going to be talking about the heat exchanger, which is made at our factory, designed and manufactured at our factory in Oxnard, California. We're going to be talking about dynamic protection, which is a flow monitor that protects the heat exchanger. And then we're going to be talking about our compact size. So we'll get right into it. For those of you that are not familiar with what a fire tube heat exchanger looks like, here on the left-hand side, you can see basically what it is a stainless steel tank with all these little stainless steel tubes running across it. There's probably at least 100 tubes in there. And there's a burner that sits on the top here, and that burner is distributing heat through those tubes as the water circulates around it. So the water comes in through the bottom, circulates around those tubes as it heats up, and makes its way out of the top. So that's just a little icon of what a fire tube heat exchanger looks like. So like I said, our KOR heat exchanger, it's designed and manufactured with 316L stainless steel in our factory in Oxnard, California. We offer dynamic protection with our boilers. So, that dynamic protection is continuously monitoring flow and adjusting firing rate accordingly. We also offer a compact size. So our 4 million BTU boiler fits through a standard doorway. So why do we use 316L stainless steel? A lot of manufacturers use that 439. It's a cheaper stainless steel. It works, but the reason we use that 316L is because it's got a higher pitting resistance equivalent number. That pitting resistance equivalent number, or PREN for short, is a predictive measurement of the stainless steel alloy's resistance to pitting corrosion. So the higher the PREN number, the more corrosion resistant it is. So that 316L has a 26 PREN number, whereas 439 only has an 18 PREN number. The reason for that being is, the 316L has a little bit more nickel, which nickel provides resistance to thermal fatigue and corrosion. So you can see here, 316L stainless steel has 12% nickel, whereas that 439 only has 0.5% nickel. The other nice thing is we've got a little bit more molybdenum, so that molybdenum provides resistance to localized pitting corrosion. 316L stainless steel has 2.5% molybdenum, whereas 439 has 0. So, overall, stainless steel in general is a pretty weak metal. The only reason we like to use it on our condensing boilers is it's the only thing that can handle condensate. So having that stronger material in the stainless steel just provides longevity for the boiler, prevents that thermal fatigue, prevents corrosion, and just like I said, it helps with the longevity of that fire tube heat exchanger. So now we'll talk a little bit about turn down and efficiency. Our XVers with KOR, the highest turn down we offer with that unit is 15 to 1. Some other manufacturers offer a 25 to 1 with their fire tube boilers. You can see here with a 15 to 1 turn down, our minimum firing rate is 6.6%. With a 25 to 1 turn down, our minimum firing rate is 4%. So there's really only a 2.6% difference in that minimum firing rate between a 15 to 1 and a 25 to 1. And really the odds of a commercial boiler running at that low of a firing rate, running at 6% or even 4% is pretty slim. Where you see those benefits is more on the residential side, where you're only heating up maybe one zone at a time. On a commercial application, you may still get those low firing rates in that shoulder season where you're only needing to run it in the morning or in the evening. But even in that application, typically that boiler is going to be running at 10% or high, between 10 and 20%. We really don't see those boilers run at 6% or 4% very often. So high turn down does not always equal high efficiency. And really in the case of a commercial application, that high turn down, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because it does, but it's, there's really not that big of a difference between a 15 to 1 turn down and a 25 to 1 turn down on that low firing rate. So I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, we do have a compact size. So our 4 million BTU boiler fits through a standard doorway. So it's 34 inches wide, 74.5 inches tall. So the nice thing about that from a service and replacement standpoint, once you get that old boiler torn out, you don't need to tear out any doorways or tear out walls or tear out, driveways or anything, whatever it may be to get that boiler in the room. We've got holes for pallet jack on the front, holes for forklift on the side for easy job site transformation, but transportation. But being able to just slide that boiler in through a standard doorway without tearing anything apart is a huge benefit from a service and replacement standpoint. From a new construction standpoint, I think most people would agree that as these buildings, we're building these buildings, and it seems like our mechanical room space is getting smaller and smaller. And it's understandable. The architect and the building owner don't make any money on that mechanical room, so they're wanting it to take up as little space as possible in that building. So being able to take up less space in that mechanical room and offer the same amount of BTUs as our competitors is a huge advantage for us. We also offer 0-inch side clearances. So, you can push these boilers right up against each other. Everything for service and maintenance can be accessed through the front or the top. And this icon here on the right-hand side just shows kind of how we stack up. We're significantly smaller than competitor L's 4 million BTU unit, and we're still quite a bit smaller than competitor A's 4 million BTU unit. I will let you guys decide who competitor L and competitor A are. So next we'll talk about our dynamic protection. I've mentioned it a couple times here, but what that is basically, there's this blue flow meter. So it's an electromagnetic flow meter that sits on the inlet side of the boiler. So it's constantly monitoring flow to that boiler, and it adjusts the firing rate accordingly. So we've got different flow rates we need to meet depending on the size of the heat exchanger. Obviously a 1 million BTU is going to need less flow than a 4 million BTU, but we've got those parameters we need to meet built into the control. We've got a minimum flow rate to fire the boiler, and we've got a minimum flow rate we need to meet for that boiler to run at 100% firing rate. And if we don't meet those, either the boiler will not fire, or it'll dial down its firing rate to meet the flow rate. And where that is, I mentioned earlier that stainless steel just in general is a pretty weak metal, even if we're using 316L stainless steel. And a lot of times you can either overheat or be underheating that heat exchanger without really knowing it. And so what that dynamic protection does is it prevents from that thermal shock of the heat exchanger and prevents it from overheating or underheating, and ultimately extends the life of that heat exchanger. So I've got a little chart here. It's pretty basic. As our flow rate starts to drop, our firing rate starts to drop with Raypak XVers KOR, any Raypak boiler with dynamic protection. Whereas other manufacturers, if that flow rate starts to drop, that firing rate stays the same, and that's where you start to see that thermal fatigue happen, and that's why those heat exchanger failures happen. So, this is really nice. It protects that heat exchanger. The other thing is, if you have a job where one of your system pumps is down or something's happening with the flow that, you need a repair, you can bypass this dynamic protection for 24 hours. But after that 24-hour period, it'll go back into dynamic protection. You can bypass it again. However, we recommend not bypassing it too many times, because really that dynamic protection is there to protect the heat exchanger. And to this day, the XVers KOR has been out for 5 years now. To this day, we have not had a single heat exchanger failure on the XVers KOR with dynamic protection. So it's, we kind of put our money where our mouth is. It's proven that it works. So we like to use it as much as we can. Next, we'll talk about a new feature of our XVers with KOR is our O2 track and trim. So basically, what it is there's an O2 sensor now in the vent stack, right out of the outlet of the boiler. It's continuously monitoring the oxygen level of flue gas in the vent piping, and it will adjust the gas valve and the air shutter accordingly. It'll either lower that or increase it to meet what was set up at startup. So this is really nice for places like Colorado, where you get those huge swings in pressures and air temperatures. Say the boiler started up in September. Now it's February, that air pressure's dropped. There might be a little less oxygen in the air. So being able to adjust that firing or adjust those air shutters and the oxygen levels automatically without having to send a guy to a job site to do another startup, in the winter versus the fall, versus the spring, is really nice. And again, it just kind of helps with the longevity of that system, keeps that burner nice and clean, keeps the boiler, the heat exchanger from sitting up. It does increase your thermal efficiency as well. It's only 1.5%, but we like to get as much efficiency out of these boilers as we possibly can. So, like I said, that's new this year. It'll come standard on our XVers core from now on. We also offer Raymo. This is on the XVers core, but it's on any boiler that has our Versa control platform, which is basically all of our boilers at this point. What that Raymode is, you can download an app on your phone, or if you don't want to do that, you can download or create an account on your desktop. But if you have a building owner or maintenance group that has several different boilers, or even one boiler, that they don't want to, have to go into the boiler room to monitor, this allows remote monitoring. So you're able to see inlet temperature, outlet temperature, sorry, outlet temperature, system temperature, run times, basically any parameter you could possibly think of on this boiler. You're able to view it remotely. So if you have a maintenance crew that's got several different boilers they're in charge of, they can add them all to their Raymode account and basically review all of it that way. The other nice thing about this is if you're having like a weird technical issue where the boiler's locking out, let's say in the middle of the night when nobody's in there, then the maintenance guy goes there, runs all day, no problems, locks out again at night. You're able to kind of pinpoint what's actually happening when it locks out. You can look at all those parameters. If in the field we can't figure it out, our tech support team and our engineering team can go into this account, not into their account, but they can access the boiler through their Raymode accounts and kind of help dial in what's going on. So just kind of helps us get to solutions faster. I know a lot of these boiler problems happen, but the quicker we can get them figured out, the better it is for everybody. So that was the XVers with KOR. As I said before, it's 1 million to 4 million BTUs. This little chart here shows all the sizes that we have in between, as well as dimensions and everything. If you've got an application that's requiring a smaller unit, we offer our XVers L, which is 400,000 to 850,000 BTUs. Same control. It's a fire tube heat exchanger. You can get it with dynamic protection, just a little bit smaller unit for those smaller applications. We also offer our X-Fire unit, which is 300,000 to 1 million BTUs. This is a Sermeta water tube heat exchanger, so that burner sits inside of the heat exchanger and the water circulates around it. The nice thing about that Sermeta heat exchanger is it can be used for hydronic heating or water heating. Again, comes with the Versa control. You could get it with dynamic protection as well as an adder. And just a nice option if you're needing space heating or water heating. So that's our condensing equipment. I appreciate everybody being here today, and I will pass it back over to Gary.
All right. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Mark, for the presentation here. We have a few prizes for this week for our winner to pick from. We have a lovely back massage for your chair. We have a $100 gift card to Meow Wolf, and we have a dumpster fire pencil holder. That one is probably one that I would lean towards. So please reach out to your Long sales engineer to give them your selection. And thank you again, everybody, and have a great rest of your week.